So good morning, and thank you so much for joining us for our first NCOIL one-on-one interview. So to begin today, I'd first like to ask how and when did you first get involved in public service? And then along with that, please explain the different levels of government service you've been involved in other than the state legislator, if any.
So yeah, this is really neat that you're doing this. So thank you. I would say this, because I always find it interesting the path people took, because I came out of local government. So if you ask the question of when did I first get involved, I remember as a kid, I always loved politics. It was kind of, I love the presidential elections, etc. I came from a non-political family. None of my parents were really that involved in politics, but I was. Loved it. So when I was in my late 20s, I got elected to our local county council, and I served on that for 14 years. Then an opening came up in 2008 in the General Assembly here, and so I ran for this seat and got elected to that. So 14 years in local government on the county council, and then the last, how many years is that now? The last 13 in here in the General Assembly.
Okay. Great. And then how would you say that your public service impacts your family life?
That's a really good question, because it's I think if you talked about anybody, it's a positive and a negative. I tell people my kids have been exposed to things a lot of young kids would never have an opportunity to do, places they've gone, people they've had a chance to meet. And yet at the same time, you're thrust into this public eye to where your spouse, your kids are all part of this, no matter what they do or where they go. They're kind of under that public scrutiny in a way. And so, I just tell people I chose this position, so I choose the good and the bad to go with it. My family chose it as well to a certain degree, but you try to shield them as much as you can, because the votes I cast are my votes. So if you don't like the policy, talk to me about it. And sometimes it kind of pulls the family in. And I know here in Indiana, we're a part-time legislature, but we are, I'm a little over 2 hours to home. And so I actually stayed down here during the week. So when the kids were a little younger, I try to get back as much as I could to see their stuff. Yeah. But there's a separation there, but it's probably good and bad. But it's just been a challenge at times. But really, it is so rewarding, and the family has been absolutely supportive of this. And I think they would tell you that they are really glad their dad got involved, and my wife would tell you the same thing probably.
Great. Okay, good. All right, and then moving on to NCOIL, how did you first hear about NCOIL, and how many years have you been involved in the organization?
So if we kind of start with the fact that from a standpoint of background, I'm 30 years now as an independent insurance agent here in Indiana. So I was very involved with my interest in politics when I was on county government. I was very involved in our local association, our state association, trade association for agents. So I was at the state house on a couple different occasions on different bills and that. And really, that's also when the opportunity came to run. I kind of like, hey, this is kind of exciting. And I tell people as a citizen legislature, we bring our expertise to the table. And so my expertise lies in the area of insurance. So when I got here, I immediately began to look at where are there places I can plug in and deal with insurance. And all of a sudden I get this notice that, hey, here's this organization called NCOIL that meets 3 times a year. Would you like to go to one of their events? And I got elected in 2008. I think it was the 2009 summer meeting. I think in Boston might have been the first one I went to. I really thought, man, this is the place for me, because it brought together the legislative passion that I had along with the insurance background. And so that got me started, and been there ever since. I think I've been to every meeting since then.
Wow. And then going off of that, how would you describe your experience with NCOIL since you've been involved, and then also moving on to an officer and now NCOIL president?
So I would say when I started with NCOIL, that I never looked at a path. I never thought, man, someday I'm going to be president of this organization. Yeah. I really looked at how can I make a difference, because being an insurance guy, and I do P&C, so I was interested in the P&C committee and workers' comp. I don't do a lot of life and health and financial services. So naturally, I just kind of attached to those. Well, that leads you to the discussion of, hey, would you like to chair the property and casualty committee? Would you like to chair the different committees? I chair, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 different ones in my time with NCOIL. And so when you get into that level, you begin to interact a lot more with the leadership of NCOIL. And so then it became a thing where, hey, you've been chair of different committees. You've started working a lot now with the people that went before me, with the George Kaisers and the Neil Breslins, and the Raperts, and it's like, hey, we want to kind of bring you into this. And it was just kind of a natural fit for me. So I'm really glad I was able to get involved in the chairs and be a part of the officer corps.
Good. Okay. And then what would you say is your most valuable takeaway of being an NCOIL member?
Well, I would say the greatest takeaway is this. I tell people in my industry, next to banking, we're probably the most regulated industry out there. And we are, because of the fact that we're insurance, McCarran Ferguson, we are regulated by the states. So really, we're the most state regulated in some ways entity out there. So if that's going to be the case, I want input on that. I want to be a part of that decision-making process. So we bring our expertise. And so I think that the commitment NCOIL has made is, we are committed to that state-based delivery system. At the same time, we want to make sure that what we're doing is good public policy for our constituents, and that the market is fair and equitable and competitive. And so it's been able to, over the years, kind of bring all that together with NCOIL. And so I think that's a great reason to be a member, is to have that input. And then, we have some states where I've noticed the people coming don't have that insurance background that a lot of people have from other states. And so to be able to hand them a model and say, hey, this has been vetted by all the players, all, the markets are out there, giving their input, other legislators giving their input. It's a good thing you can take back to your state and implement. I think that's what makes NCOIL work. And what makes it work well is the fact that we are, again, focused solely on that state base. So I tell people, as you get involved, you're going to be making a difference in the true impact of what happens in your state.
Right. Okay. And then I guess that kind of leads into the next question. So for legislators thinking of joining NCOIL, why should they join? What's the one thing you would say to them?
I would say it's kind of an all hands on deck approach. I mean, this isn't my NCOIL. This isn't, so-and-so's NCOIL. This is our NCOIL. This is what it takes, all of you coming from, and I want to hear different states' perspectives. What are you doing in Kentucky? What are you doing in Utah? What are you doing in Idaho that's going to make a difference that I can take back and implement here in Indiana? And so if you're out there and you're saying, look, I'm on this insurance committee, I'm not really an insurance person, why should I go to NCOIL? Because you're going to be making those decisions in those committees. Come and get data, come and get information. And that networking is so valuable. I've got so many people now, I'll pick up my phone, and I'll text Bart Rowland or Jim Dunnigan. I'll say, hey, what are you guys doing with this or that? I've talked to Rayburn in Arkansas. I mean, just that network is so vital when it comes to insurance legislation, that I think it's very important that if you're thinking of coming, kind of, dip your toe in the water, absolutely come and see what we do and dip that toe in, because, then once you're in, you see what we do. I think that gets a lot of people back in the future. Yeah,
agreed. And then how about benefits for non-legislators? So consumer reps or industry reps, what would you say the benefit is of those kinds of people coming to NCOIL meetings?
Well, I would say the benefit their test is we want their input. This isn't this isn't a we come in and we just do our thing and leave. I mean, we want input on how is this going to impact the market? When we did some of the issues, like I think one of the favorite laws I went through that I've worked on is the TNC, Transportation Network model that we put together that I think has been now adopted in very multiple states, which is the industry came and said, look, there's some conflict here. Carriers are saying this is our world of insurance. We're not going to budge on this. And this whole new technology of ride sharing was putting pressure on that industry. And we had to come in and say, okay, let's listen to you. Let's listen to you. and let's try to bring this together to where we finally said, look, here's a good bill, here's a good law, and then the states took that back and said, it's a good fit. And so I think that input from the industry was vital for us to get to a place that we passed, I think, a good model, now good legislation.
Great. All right. And then actually one of my next questions was, have you, since being involved in NCOIL, do you have a favorite model law that you guys have passed, and why is that? Would that be your favorite that you just spoke about?
Well, I think that was the one that was the most intriguing to me. It was, and it wasn't even, I don't even tell you it was my model. But it just, I got the most involved in that. And we've had models with rebating. We just implemented a rebating here. We've done the TNC. We've done a lot of things around towing. And I think that there's you can kind of go through and you think there's some that were the high visible issues, but the thing with insurance is a lot of it's just not that visible, but it's absolutely necessary. So when I look at some of the models, they're technical in nature, they're maybe deep into the verbiage, but it's so crucial that we do good work there. And so I think the TNC was a good example of bringing the market, the industry, and the carriers to the table and saying, look, this isn't an easy lift, but we're going to all do this together. And so I think that's one I'm probably we're proud, but really like to see we got across the finish line. Now we've taken out to multiple states.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good. And then now how about going on to COVID-19? So how has COVID affected your experience with NCOIL? Did you have different expectations coming into, the position of NCOIL president? Now you're going to be the longest serving NCOIL president in history. And maybe it could be said that COVID has a benefit in that regard. What would you say?
Yeah, it depends who you talk to.
Yeah.
I tell people when I became the president of NCOIL, I had dark black hair and now it's as white as a ghost. But I would say this, it's really reflective, I think, just as a whole. We never know what the future holds. And so when I became the president, we went into 2020 with high hopes of we were dealing with scooters, and we were dealing with issues that had nothing to do with, there was a lot of issues we had out there. But suddenly, just because of what happened with the pandemic, you suddenly have this massive business interruption issue now that has taken the forefront. NCOIL had to seriously jump into this and really take a leadership role in that. And now we're talking about civil liability, and we were leaders on that. So issues changed. I think we're here for a period of time, and we move on, and we want to leave our mark while we're here. And I think the fact that we've kind of carried everything over for a year, I think it helps build some consistency. More than happy to have departed and take a role as a past president. I like that title a little better than president. But the reality of it is, I think we got a good officer corps, we got good people around us, we got great leadership at NCOIL. So it turned us from a organization that I think we kind of had a lot of stuff going on out there to really being much more internal and refocusing our energies into the things that were high priorities for both the industry and for the consumers. Mm-hmm. And that caused a little more, hands on the wheel. We got to keep this thing moving. And so probably the right thing to do is to keep people around, kind of keep on the same path for another year. And I do think with us, kind of, you're seeing it coming out of COVID. I don't care what the next is on the horizon of disaster is going to be. The Lehman presidency will be coming to an end. But it is such an absolute privilege to serve as NCOIL president. I really enjoy it. I do, and I'm glad I'm still here, and that we can make a difference in the insurance world around us.
Great, it's a great answer. And then how about, do you have any advice for young professionals looking to enter the insurance industry?
That's a really good question. So I went to when I was selling cars, mm-hmm. and I had an offer to come and work for an agency and buy into it. And I had insurance is the farthest thing from my mind, right? I'm a consumer, but I'm not going to sell insurance, insurance salesman and everything. So I went and saw my uncle. My dad was passed away, but I went and saw my uncle. I said, Uncle, what is this a good deal for me? You think I was a young kid,
Yeah.
And he said, Matt, look around you at the people in the business. They're respected in their community. They're doing well by providing for their family. It's a great profession. And I remember thinking about that a lot, because I started thinking it's not a job, it's a career. And so what I tell people is that, you set aside all the nuances of what you hear people talk about insurance salesmen. And I tell our staff all the time, we repair shattered lives. No one comes to see us because they want to see us. They come to see us because they've had something, they want to have preventative, and then something tragic has happened. And so it's a wonderful profession to be in. And I think that what it does also then is when you get into the industry, just the insurance industry, that's when you begin to say, wow, there's a lot of laws that affect us. And so what I hope that triggers is a desire in some of these people to say, you know what, maybe I need to be involved in this legislative process as well. So I think it goes twofold. Get into the industry because it's a fantastic industry to be in. You're making a difference in people's lives, but then also don't be afraid to delve into that legislative portion of it as well.
Okay, great. Well, now to finish our interview, we do have a quick lightning round questions for you. So,
okay.
All right, let's go. So, favorite all-time movie?
Favorite all-time movie? Wow, that's because there's so many things about genres, but I would say it depends the mood you're in a little bit. I would say this: if I'm watching TV and I'm going through the channels, really about any other than some of the latest Star Wars movies, the old Star Wars movies are by far some of my favorite. Lord of the Rings movies, kind of that fantasy vein.
Same, yeah.
But I'm also a sports guy, so Field of Dreams is one of my favorite movies. But comedies, I love comedies too. Dumb and Dumber. There's just too much silliness in that to not appreciate it. So I'm not one of these, I have my one genre and that's all I ever watch. I'll watch about anything, but I do latch on to some really high quality stuff. But not much of an art film guy.
Yeah.
Mine are all pretty low in the totem pole.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, we have Lord of the Rings marathons every year, so that's awesome. All right. So, favorite all-time book or musical artist?
That's another hard one because I'm a big reader. I love to read, and I usually read 3 or 4 different books at one time.
Yep.
I love biography. I love to find out about people, especially historical figures. So I'm always a biography reader. I also like Malcolm Gladwell is one of my favorite authors. I just love the way he writes, and he makes you think about how we interact with people, etc. So from a book side, I'm always trying to read something from Malcolm Gladwell and normally some biography. Music wise, it's I'm kind of an old country folk guy, the Guy Clark world, but I'm bar none Eagles all the way. Eagle,
great,
big Eagle.
awesome.
Big Eagle.
All right, favorite all-time TV show?
Oh, Andy Griffith Show. Andy Griffith Show, hands down.
That's easy.
Andy Griffith Show. If I had to pick more modern, I'd say The Office.
Okay.
But Andy Griffith Show, hands down, best television show ever made.
Okay, good to know. Let's check it out. All right, and then if you could have 3 dinner guests, living or dead, who would they be?
3 dinner guests. That's always a hard one too, because
I know.
I like big dinners for one thing. So I hate to limit. I would probably say, as a man of faith, I'd want Jesus at the table to, interact with him about his whole life and all that. I'm a big history guy. Abraham Lincoln, obviously one of my right behind me here. I would love to sit down with him and talk, not even so much about the war, just himself. He was such an interesting individual. And then a third, this may be an odd one to people, is it's my great grandfather, Abraham Sprunger. He left Switzerland basically with a suitcase and a bunch of kids. And I've always wanted to know why. I mean, 200 years on the same farm, and he just up and comes to America. I mean, I'm glad he did. Otherwise, I'd be on some hillside in Switzerland. Wouldn't be so bad, but I think I just would love to know that immigration story from so many of those who came here. He came in the mid 1800s. And I would just love to know what drove him to our shores. I mean, you talk to my family and they're like, well, fertile farmland or that, but he basically uprooted his entire family. So I think that'd be a fascinating story to hear.
Okay, that's great. Well, that is it for today. That wraps it up.
Hey.
So thank
Right.
you so much. Do you have any questions for me before we finish up?
No, I don't. We don't get to do a reverse lightning round, but I would say the thing I'll add to all this, kind of put a bow on all this, is the biggest thing I'll advocate for NCOIL is its openness. I mean, I've told people, please reach out, please call us, call Tom, call Will, call Tess. You've got a question, you've got something. We want to be there to make a difference. And so I think I'm excited about, there's more people that I think are getting involved. We're seeing more states engage. I think it's an exciting time for NCOIL, and absolutely look forward to the future and well beyond the times I'm here.